Who was the real Dracula? Episode 1. The Legend versus the Man. When you hear the name Dracula, what comes to your mind? For most people, it's the image of a pale-skinned vampire with sharp fangs, a long black cloak, and a thirst for human blood. He is the creature of the night, lurking in shadowed castles, sleeping in coffins, and hunting innocent souls. That is the Dracula we know from movies, novels, and Halloween costumes. But what if I told you that Dracula was not born in Hollywood? What if the most terrifying parts of his story are not fiction at all? That behind the vampire myth stood a real man, a prince, a warrior, and one of the most feared rulers in European history. His name was Vlad III of Wallachia, also remembered as Vlad Dracula, or simply Vlad the Impaler. And unlike the vampire, this man did not just drink blood in stories. He spilled it across entire battlefields, leaving forests of corpses to rot on wooden stakes. This is not the Dracula of legends. This is the Dracula of history. The name: Dracula. The word Dracula itself has a dark meaning. In Latin, it means son of the dragon. Vlad's father, Vlad II, was a member of the Order of the Dragon, a chivalric order founded to defend Christian Europe against the Ottoman Turks. The dragon's symbol, however, was feared in local folklore. In Romanian, the word drac also meant devil. So when locals heard Dracula, they didn't just think of a dragon's son, they thought of the devil's son. Even from birth, Vlad was marked with a name that inspired fear. Childhood in chains. Vlad was born in 1431 in Transylvania, a land that would forever be tied to his legend. But his early life was not filled with castles and glory. Instead, it was filled with betrayal, captivity, and bloodshed. As a boy, he and his younger brother Radu were taken as political hostages by the Ottoman Empire. For years, he lived in enemy territory, surrounded by foreign customs, threatened with death if his father dared to betray the Sultan. Imagine growing up knowing your life was a pawn in a bigger game. Some historians say this experience hardened Vlad. Others believe it filled him with hatred and cruelty. Either way, when he returned to Wallachia as a young man, he was no ordinary prince. He was a storm waiting to erupt. Rise of a ruthless prince. Wallachia, his homeland, was not a peaceful kingdom. It was a land squeezed between two giants, the Christian kingdoms of Europe and the expanding Ottoman Empire. Rulers rose and fell quickly, often assassinated or betrayed. Power was not inherited peacefully, it was seized with blood. Vlad fought fiercely for his throne, not once, but multiple times. Each time he lost, he returned stronger. And when he finally secured his rule, he was determined to keep it at all costs. But how do you rule a land where enemies surround you on every side? Vlad's answer was simple: fear. The birth of the Impaler. Vlad earned his infamous title, Tepesh, meaning the Impaler, from his signature method of punishment. Impalement was a brutal execution. A sharp wooden stake was forced through the body, sometimes vertically, from bottom to mouth, leaving the victim alive in agony for hours, even days. Corpses were left standing upright, creating entire fields of the dead. This was not random cruelty. Vlad used terror as a weapon. A thief was impaled to warn other thieves. An enemy army was met with a forest of the impaled to break their spirit before the battle even began. One Ottoman report described soldiers marching into Wallachia only to find 20,000 impaled corpses stretching as far as the eye could see. Even hardened warriors were shaken to the core. To his enemies, Vlad was a monster. To his people, he was a protector who kept invaders at bay. Hero or monster. This is where the legend of Dracula begins to blur. In Romania, especially in modern times, Vlad is remembered as a national hero, a man who defended his land against overwhelming odds. He resisted the mighty Ottoman Empire, who sought to conquer Europe. But in Western Europe, the story was different. German pamphlets printed during his lifetime painted him as a sadistic tyrant. They told stories of him boiling people alive, cutting off body parts, even drinking blood from his enemies. Whether these tales were truth or propaganda, they spread like wildfire. Imagine being a peasant in 15th century Europe, hearing tales of a prince who dined among corpses, who killed without mercy, who might even drink human blood. It was a horror story, and horror stories survive. But how did Vlad the Impaler, a ruthless prince, turn into Dracula the vampire? That transformation came centuries later. In 1897, Irish writer Bram Stoker published his novel, Dracula. He needed a name for his villain, and he found it in the history of Vlad. Stoker never visited Transylvania, but he read about Vlad's reputation as a bloodthirsty ruler. He borrowed the name Dracula and tied it to the ancient vampire myths of Eastern Europe. The result was a character that was part history, part folklore, and part imagination. From there, Dracula became immortal, not as a prince, but as a vampire. Conclusion of Episode 1. So when we ask, who was the real Dracula? The answer is not simple. He was a prince, a prisoner, a warrior, and a terror. He was a national hero and a bloodthirsty killer. His life was so filled with violence that it inspired legends lasting more than 500 years. The vampire is fiction, but the fear was very real. And this is only the beginning of the story. In the next episode, we will go deeper into the childhood of Vlad Dracula, his years of captivity under the Ottomans, and how that shaped the monster or the hero he became.